Moms for Liberty really worked miracles.
We have a crisis in America in public education. This is the future of our kids and our country.
You are joyful warriors.
And we are just getting started. Good morning. Welcome to the Fire of Liberty show. We are live today from Madison, Wisconsin, which is crazy because it seems like the show is a show on the road lately. Last week we were in Des Moines, Iowa. I just seem to be traveling all around the country because our chapters are doing amazing things. Last week, our Iowa chapters put together a gubernatorial debate, which was remarkable. So we went live and did the Fire of Liberty Wednesday morning there with two of our chapter leaders. This morning, I'm at the Capitol in Madison, Wisconsin, because our Wisconsin chapters have come together for their legislative day at the Capitol. And what's even more fun is my guest today is a former co-chair of the very first chapter in Wisconsin. And she is now a state legislator. So we are in her beautiful office. I thought the Iowa Capitol was gorgeous, but I think this is either going to beat the Iowa Capitol or maybe come in second. It's a beautiful building. I will say, so we have, Moms for Liberty has legislators now in multiple states that were chapter leaders or members, and then they ran for office and they've been elected. So Sam Fett is in Iowa, and she is a former chapter chair. And in Iowa, they don't get offices. They have just a desk on the floor. And so it's just fun to go to the different state capitals and learn different things. And so this morning, we have Wisconsin State Representative Amanda Nedweski. I got that all right. Yeah. And so we're excited to be here in your office. Thank you for having us. And we're going to talk a lot about her journey because it's very similar to a lot of our moms, I would say, except they don't all end up in the state house. So tell me, how'd you get started on your Moms for Liberty journey, your activism journey, I'll say?
Long story short, I got just fed up with the government during COVID. And I was worried about my kids and the children in my community, businesses in my community. I was never one to want to take any active role in politics, but the activism was one school board meeting turned into running for the county board, turned into...
Oh, don't go through the whole story. Because I want to understand what you said. Were you a registered voter? Were you an active voter?
Yeah, I was an informed voter and an active voter, but I worked as a financial analyst for a manufacturing company, a global company that was publicly held. I worked for the CFO. I had a very good job. I had done some consulting in more recent years, and I did not have a political journey in my mind in the future. I just went to one school board meeting. I was very concerned because in the city of Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is right between Milwaukee and Chicago, for those who don't know, it's very urban, and it's a majority-minority school district of about 20,000 students at the time, and about 60% of those students are economically disadvantaged. So keeping schools closed was going to be very, very difficult on those children and families. So I went to a school board meeting out of concern more for my community, saying, we already have one of the worst racial achievement gaps in academics in the country. We have, social issues that are handled more at school than at home. People need to get fed. Our reports of child abuse were going down because mandatory reporters weren't able to observe things. I was concerned. And I went to a school board meeting and said, please open up in the fall. I couldn't believe they were considering staying closed, and they voted to stay closed. And I kept going back and going back. Some people reached out to me and said, I wouldn't have the courage to go to a school board meeting and say what you said. Thank you for saying what, you're speaking what I'm thinking. And next thing you know, I made some new friends, and I got a little bit of help, and then we would coordinate, we're going to go to this meeting, you say this and you say this, and we all get 3 minutes,
Yeah.
And we were able to affect some change right off the bat with the school superintendent and the school board president gave me the time of day to say, why should we open? And I had done the research. And
let's talk a little bit about the achievement gap, because you kind of, you listed that in a list of things that were concerning about schools being closed, especially for impoverished children. And racially diverse children, I'll say. We all knew that. I was on a school board. I was very concerned about students that didn't have English at home and trying to do online learning, all the things that they were trying to make happen that weren't going to work for most students. And people like you and I knew that. And so you said quickly, you just kind of said it quickly, like one of the worst in the country achievement gaps. And for those that are watching right now that don't know what an achievement gap is, because not everybody does, do you want to explain that to them?
Well, in terms of, the academic outcomes for particularly for Black students in the state of Wisconsin are so much lower than they are for white and Hispanic students. Not great for Hispanic students either. But at this point in time, Wisconsin used to be a state that was known for high quality education systems. And in recent decades has just kind of really fallen off. At one time, Mississippi was the worst in the country for reading.
Not anymore.
And we are now below them.
Well, Mississippi has risen, I think, to one of the
have.
top because of, and we're going to talk about, because of the same decisions that you helped make. I would say last year in office, but let's not get there yet, because this achievement gap is something that is tracked all across the nation. Every the federal government, the DOE, which hopefully won't be around much longer, tracks it. Every state tracks it. Every school district is obsessively tracking it. And I don't think it's talked about publicly much because it's a racial, disparity. You're talking about race and nobody wants to talk about that. But there is all across America a gap between white students, Hispanic students, and then Black students. And Black students their learning gains, all of the things are dramatically lower. And in our district, they even started doing studies on wealth. It didn't seem to impact. And so why, right? How do you figure that out and how do you solve that problem? So I love that so early on you were concerned with that. And the reason I bring it up so strongly right now is because when you had the opportunity to do something about it, in your current position, you did something, and not everybody does that. And so, so you see all these problems, you're bringing them, the superintendent's giving you the light of day. At what point are you like, oh, Moms for Liberty, that sounds like a good idea? Like, where did that come
about a year? So I made a few friends, but they did not want to organize. Parents were sort of like, well, I don't want to be in the paper. I don't want my employer to, think I'm anti health and safety.
Were you worried about your job, speaking at a school board
I wasn't, because I was self-employed at the time.
Oh, okay.
So, but I understood people's concerns. If you didn't think your kids should be wearing masks or getting a shot or whatever, it was maybe somewhat unpopular with your employer, and people did not want to be doxxed online and things like that. So I tried to organize this group of parents. They were not interested in being an organized group. And I really felt like as an individual, you have a voice, but even if you're 5 people, if people perceive that you are organized, there's a lot more power behind that. They don't know if you're 5 or 500. I worked through the year with this loosely organized group of parents, maybe 10 people. And then eventually, we just could not overcome some of the mandates on, the pandemic related stuff, quarantining, masking, shots, things like that. Remote learning and how they were doing that. It was just so very frustrating. So I wanted to give up. I'm like, well, I think I've played my part here. I helped to get the doors open. I've helped a few people feel courageous enough to speak up, but what's my role here anymore? And I was like, this is probably not for me. And a random person who had been following me online reached out and said, you should connect with Amber, my friend Amber, who was not my friend at the time. Next thing you know, there's 5 of us meeting at a local school board meeting to try to sort of see what the situation was there. It was right before school was supposed to open in the fall, and they were deciding whether or not, this is 2021, and they were still deciding what they were going to do. And the 5 of us kind of came together. Hi, I'm so-and-so. We talked on Facebook, we talked online, we texted, and today we're best friends. So Amber had heard of Moms for Liberty, and she's like, I want to start this group in Wisconsin. Would you be interested in helping me? And I had been looking for the opportunity to organize. So I had to, do a little, online stalking of y'all. I'm like, I don't know who these people are. And, you're sort of like, is it a fly-by-night organization? It's brand new, or how long are they going to last? What's the real platform? Is there anything creepy behind it?
We were brand new at First 21. We launched January 1st, 2021. And for those that don't know, this is our 5-year, well, now it's February. So last month was our 5-year anniversary.
Phenomenal. So, I said, I think we should do it. Let's go for it. And it started out as 5 people. We roped in maybe 20 more over the next few months. But I mean, the very first thing we did was go to a bunch of school board meetings to help people make sure their doors were open in the fall. And we actually had the school board president at the time had changed from the year before. She kept shutting down meetings whenever we showed up.
It was happening all across the country.
They would always have extra security when we were there. I'm like, we never did anything except get up and speak our 3 minutes and sit down, but
it's a crazy time.
Yeah. People were scared of the truth. They were scared of the truth. And we just kept doing it with smiles, and she would shut the meetings down. They would have chairs 6 feet apart, and you have to socially distance. And this room is a capacity of 500, and you're letting 12 people into a public meeting.
Yeah.
So she would just shut them down, and it was repeated. And so we made an effort to recall her. We knew that it was probably going to be very difficult, but it was saying, look, we are serious about this. We went on a mission to collect signatures for the recall. It's a pretty tough thing to do in Wisconsin. You have to get a lot of signatures to recall somebody. It's based on the results of the most previous governor's race. But we were out there, and people were seeing us, and they're like, well, those ladies are kind of serious. They're not joking around. I mean, the first day we got, I think, 500 signatures.
It's amazing.
Because people were that mad. And it was about time I saw some fire in people besides just the handful of people the year I've been, working on this previous.
And at this point, you're a bandit. I'm going to call you a bandit of, you said it earlier.
We're a band of traveling moms, or a group of bandit moms, or whatever. I mean, like the public coined us, a few different phrases. They weren't all very friendly.
So you really were, and I came up with that term because she just mentioned it while she was speaking at their legislative days. She said, we were just a bandit of traveling moms. And so it's about 25 of you, you're a bandit of traveling moms trying to recall a school board member.
And, we knew we had to make it very public. And some people were in disagreement with us, but it made an impact. Okay. And we went from there, grew the chapter. And one day, a nonprofit here in Wisconsin called the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty that does a lot of
great friends of Moms for Liberty. They represent a lot of our people, and the tools and resources on their website are amazing.
Yeah, and they're a 501c3. They're not, they're not involved in politics, but they have advocated on a lot of these issues. And there was a bill here in the Capitol that was on curriculum transparency, and there.
How long ago did it stop? Because it looked like it was Welcome back to the Fire of Liberty show. I'm Tina Deskovich, the CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. My guest today is Wisconsin State Representative. I forget sometimes what state I'm in. I was going to say Idaho, Illinois. Like I travel so much and meet so many great people across the country. Wisconsin State Representative Amanda Nedweski.
You got it.
Nedweski. I think with Deskovich, I would be better at Polish names. We are here today in her office at the Capitol. She is the former co-chair of the Kenosha County Moms for Liberty chapter. Her story and journey is amazing. It's inspiring. The work she's done to help education in her state is an example that I think many can follow across the country. And so we've had some technical difficulties for those that are watching live online. We have picked the show back up. We're going to try to remember what we were talking about. I think at this point, you're a bandit of moms that have formed a chapter of Moms for Liberty in Kenosha. You're making progress with your school district, but also a lot of roadblocks. And so somewhere along this, you decided to run for, you were the first person. At this point, we hadn't even decided we were getting involved in races. We hadn't launched a PAC. Like none of that had happened with Moms for Liberty. And I get a message that's like, our co-chair in Wisconsin is running for county board. I had no idea what that was. And I was, why a county board? Why not the school board? I remember having this thought process and I didn't know you at all. And then I heard you won.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
I would say that probably inspired us to really get more involved in elections. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So you're on the county board and you win, and now you're impacting policy, health policy locally. And then the next thing I know, I get a message that says, Amanda's going to run for our state legislature. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? This is crazy. And so what happened with, first of all, how'd you make that leap? And how did that turn out for you?
Well, we had trouble in the county with Wisconsin has 72 counties. Each one has a local health official countywide. And ours was essentially bending the truth and telling schools and businesses.
Would that be lying?
She was misrepresenting the law to school districts and to businesses that she had the authority to close them down if they didn't follow her COVID guidance. And we reached out to the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty and said, is she right? They said no. They wrote a letter on her behalf to make sure that they were calling her out. And then those parents and those community members who served on school boards were, they trusted her. They trusted that she was giving them the correct information. And now they started to question. So I was asked by the local Republican Party to run for the county board. In the Kenosha County is about 178,000 people. There's 23 county board districts. And they take care of like county services, human services, public works.
It's like a county commission, probably.
Yeah, it's like a county commission. Mm-hmm. And I had no interest. I just wanted to go back to my normal life and do some activism on the side. But it was my opportunity to confront this particular person and say, you are not doing positive things in our community. Your decisions that you're doing and the leadership you think you're providing is causing harm. So I ran for the county board and won that seat and was appointed the chair of the Human Services Commission, where I was able to bring a lot of accountability to that department. Wonderful. Publicly. And eventually I had so many questions for her. I had to call her all the time. And eventually she decided Kenosha County was no longer for her. So I'm not going to say that I forced her out, but I think she probably figured she had worn out her welcome. And shortly after I won the county board race, this assembly seat opened up for the first time in 2 decades. And my predecessor had run for county executive at the same time, which is like our county administrator, but it's elected. And she asked me to run for her seat. I said, absolutely not. I am not interested in politics. And I already did this one thing that I was only going to do one time. Anyway, long story short, I had to pray on it, and I talked to my family, and my son was kind of, last year of high school, and I'm like, I guess I have the time to do this. And you see it as it was a window of opportunity. It's not like I'll wait and do it in 4 years. It might not open up again for a long time. So I decided to roll the dice and go with it. And
you won.
I won. I won.
And you won.
Well, like, it's a strange story. I had a primary and a general in the spring, and then I had a primary and a general in the fall. And that's 4 elections in 1 year after never running for office. So I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
However, at the moment, I'm actually considering a run for state Senate.
Really?
Because our Senate seat just opened up a couple of days ago.
Oh, wow. I would say that would be a good path forward for you.
I'm thinking about it.
But let's talk about why, because it wouldn't be a good path for you if you were a lazy legislator, and you're not. Like, the things that you're doing and accomplishing are impacting children across your state. And so I want to talk a little bit about, was it what was the name of the bill?
The Right to Read.
The Right to Read Act. Was it an act? The Right to Read Act, which you co-sponsored? Did I get that right?
Co-authored.
Co-authored. Let's talk about that a little, because when we opened up, we talked about this achievement gap. What's your reading scores across the state? Like proficiency, do you know roughly?
We are, as of today, I'm not sure, but coming out of the pandemic and even before, we're talking about less than 30% of students at 4th and 8th grade.
That's how it is nationwide. But there's some caveats where it's getting better. As we just talked about Mississippi, some of the states that have been the worst in education are cracking the code on how to improve reading scores. But we have the lowest nationwide since the 1980s. And so what are you doing? What have you done here since you've been in office in the state of Wisconsin to help kids be able to read?
Right. So I came in and I was on the education committee, and I was trying to get to know the chair a little bit, and he was working on the Mississippi model. So Kimiana Burke had led Mississippi in, the movement toward the science of reading, and I learned all about it, and I said, I want to be a part of this.
Let's talk about the science of reading, because plenty of people that are watching don't know what the science of reading is. So when you say the science of reading, what is that? Is it a brand? Is it a way of learning? What is that?
I don't know who coined the phrase, the science of reading. Actually, there's a professor out of UW here in Wisconsin that wrote a book on this.
Okay.
And I believe it's somebody who's in neuroscience and how we learn to read. There was an education summit or something here early in the session, and she was a guest speaker, and basically said, look, we've been doing this methodology of whole language and balanced literacy the last couple of decades.
Sight words.
Yeah,
which, you just memorize the words by sight instead of learning phonics and sounding it out.
Phonics, right? So the correlation was very obvious in the data that it wasn't working. And what I thought what was amazing to me was during the pandemic, parents had to teach their own kids how to read. And they were like, I don't know how to teach my child how to read. I know how I learned how to read. And it was probably using phonics. Mm-hmm. So we had parents who were going to the library and trying to find books on how to teach your child to read and just using phonics again.
When you instinctively know how to, it's the same with math. Like, they tried to introduce Common Core math and none of us could help our kids because they had to change it, when, the rest go back to how it's worked for decades and generations.
Indeed. So, I was very interested in, like I said, I have a huge concern in my heart for my community. When we have an educated populace, it's better for all of us. Yeah. And, we have a lot of kids at risk in the city part of our county. And I was like, this is not right. The gap has always been bad. It's going to be worse post-pandemic. What can we do? Representative Kitchens, who chairs the education committee, I believe the moms are hearing from him later today. He was leading the charge on this literacy bill. And it was kind of working off the Mississippi model. We need to invest in some reading coaches and make sure there's more resources in every school. It's difficult here in Wisconsin because we have divided government. We have a Republican legislature and a Democrat governor at the time. But he was the former state superintendent. So he kind of has an interest in this.
Hopefully he cares about kids and he understands how important it is.
He at least was willing to give it a listen. Mm-hmm. Could recognize that there's a problem. But there was always this apparent fight between, teachers union and non-teachers union people that we're doing it wrong. Nobody wants to say, I've been doing it wrong. But if that's how you were taught to teach, that's right. And it's hard to change old habits. It's hard to say, I've been teaching for 15 or 20 years, and now I have to relearn how to teach reading. Nobody wants to take on all that extra, but people who really care were like, I want to do this. Some school districts were already doing it. We wanted at the state level to sort of say, you have to do it. We're going to give you some money to do it. It started out as $15 million and some reading coaches for school districts around the state. I personally thought that wasn't enough. I'm like, teachers need training. I went and met with school districts in my assembly district. I met with the Kenosha Unified, which is it's a 20,000 student district, a big district, and said, what do you need in this bill? That superintendent is a reading specialist, Dr. Jeff Weiss, and he brought in his people, and we had some great conversations, and I tried very hard to get the teacher input into the bill.
What a great issue to bring together your bandit of Moms for Liberty, the teachers union, the already elected elites, elected officials. Everyone should want our kids to read in America. And, you're like, well, they don't want to be told that they were teaching it the wrong way. Well, put your egos aside, everybody, and let's figure out how to teach kids to read. And so what a beautiful show of trying to bring everyone together. Thank you for going to the schools, for talking to the teachers. As a side note, not to derail the whole conversation, on my flight yesterday, I was sitting next to a school board chair here in Wisconsin. And he was lovely. I wish I could remember his name, although, I don't know what his community, I'd be like,
one of 421.
Yeah. It wasn't far from Madison. He didn't have to drive too terribly far. He said, I'm kind of a centrist. He said, these school issues shouldn't be partisan. He said, I've got some very left people on my board and some very right people. I'm the chair, and I'm just trying to constantly bring everybody together so that we can serve kids. And he and I had a wonderful conversation. He's like, well, what nonprofit do you lead? And I was like, okay, here we go. Moms for Liberty. And he had no reaction. And I was like, oh, okay. Let's have this conversation. Yeah. And so you are doing just that. You are stepping into the school district after probably being the enemy during COVID, right? You're shutting down meetings when you show up. But now you're in a leadership position. And what I've seen happen across the country, not from our people, but what I've seen from elected officials in years prior, is they get in these positions of power and they use it as a weapon. Like, you cut me out of your school board meeting, and so I'm now not going to serve you. And so I just think that's the worst kind of leader. And so thank you for being the type of leader that isn't holding grudges that's going to hurt kids. You're like, no, I want to do what's right for these kids. And so you go in, you unify everybody. And tell me more. What happens with this bill? Did it pass? Did the governor sign it?
Yeah, so there were several people involved in making sure that, stakeholders all had a say, which was great. We had some great Senate authors, but, Representative Kitchens has a good relationship with the Department of Public Instruction, which is not necessarily something that happens often between Republicans and that agency. So he worked hard to build up that relationship so that they could have a partnership. He really led the charge there, and he got time in with the governor. And did we get everything we wanted in the bill? No, but it went from $15 million and some reading coaches to $50 million. Reading coaches, 64 reading coach positions, a literacy council, a literacy czar, a group of people who are going to, review the curriculum annually and make recommendations and
oversight, right? Is that what you're telling me? They're getting some oversight.
Money for professional development, for the training. You can't just say, go do this, and then money for curriculum, to purchase curriculum. So,
and who's vetting that curriculum to make sure it's not
it's a
whole world?
It's a council of appointed people. Several different, I believe the assembly leader and the Senate leader have appointments, and then the minority leaders get appointments on that board. I think that's still how it works. Okay. The governor gets an appointment anyway. It's an odd number of people.
It's an accountability board to make sure that this $50 million is actually impacting reading scores. And so is it just 1 year into this now?
We're about a year into it.
Okay. So you don't know results.
There was some funny business with the funding in the beginning.
Oh, shocker! It's government.
We have this thing in Wisconsin called the partial veto. It's the most powerful executive tool in the country. I don't want to get too far into that, but the governor got a little tricky with the partial veto pen and held up the money for a while. We had to sue him, and it went to our state Supreme Court.
Hold up. So he signed it and supported it, but he vetoed the funds.
In a way, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think we don't have that in Florida, but also, I mean, the budget is how you control everything. Like you can say, I support everything, but if you're line item vetoing things in the budget,
Right.
If it's not funded, it's not going to happen.
Right. So it was mandated in the actual bill. So a lot of times what we do here in Wisconsin is we have a policy bill and then an appropriations bill to accompany it, or it goes in the budget. And that's because of the partial veto. So the law passed. It's now a mandate. Schools have to do this. Money was supposed to follow. It got held up for a while, but schools still had to do it. So they had to spend their own money.
As a former school board member, there was unfunded mandates from the state are the absolute worst.
I know. And we were like, we have the money. It's being held up. Yeah. So,
and meanwhile, kids, if the schools,
but they were doing it.
But I know, but who's the victim of these political games? Of course. The children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I went to my local districts along the way once the program was rolling out and they were trying to figure out how they were going to, implement everything. And I was nervous that it was going to be rocky and tough, but the enthusiasm of teachers to want to do this, there were some skeptics,
of course,
but they saw that it was like, they're like, even early on, it was working. And they're like, we're seeing the results. It requires 3 assessments per year and K through 3. Mm-hmm. And if you fail an assessment, there has to be an immediate intervention plan.
Great.
That a parent has to sign off on as well as the teacher.
Oh, thank you for that.
So that was parents have to know what's going on here. We weren't doing that before. Now we are. After the first assessment, the second assessment, they're already seeing progress. So I was just enlightening to see the enthusiasm of educators to, I get it's not easy, but gave us a lot of confidence that it was the right thing to do. I'm sorry it was unfunded for the first year.
Yeah.
The case went to court at the state Supreme Court level and basically said, you cannot use the partial veto in this way.
Good.
And it's a liberal Supreme Court. So it was a good win, not just
a liberal Supreme Court, but it's for education. And traditionally they're pro-education. And at some point, did the teachers union come in and say, you better start funding this? I would think they would have been beating that drum.
I think there was a lot of unnecessary political messaging.
Politics.
Republicans are holding back the money. The governor's holding back the money. The Republicans were holding on to the money because we could not support the use of the veto in that way. It would set terrible precedent for the future.
Political games.
So the court decided in our favor, and then we were able to release the money. So we're going to fund it going forward. So it's fantastic. That's step one. We still have a math problem. We still have students beyond 3rd grade that have big literacy problems. But we got that bill signed into law in divided government, which is a near miracle.
Congratulations. We say that all the time, like our issues for the most part shouldn't be partisan issues. Mm-hmm. The fact that the powers that be have pushed us into a corner and try to say there's only one segment of society that cares, it's just not true. Because when you speak one-to-one about the things we're concerned about, most parents, most community members that care about kids want the same things we do. So
they do.
Thank you for standing. So you get to the legislature though, and you're already having major impact. Was it an easy transition from Bandit of Moms, Structured Moms for Liberty chapter to being a state legislator?
I didn't really have any expectations. My predecessor in this role became a mentor. She's my age, like we were friends, and she had been my representative prior. So I was very lucky to have her guidance. And I was like, I gotta see how it goes, If I don't like it, I won't run again. It's hard to feel your impact until later on. We didn't know how the reading bill was going to really be implemented, and now we're seeing it feels good. But it takes you a while to form relationships with your own colleagues and with colleagues across the aisle.
Was everybody welcoming? Oh, here comes Amanda. And people stopping by in the hallways and across the aisle.
The lobbyists were very welcome. And you're brand new, everyone wants to meet you from the lobby court.
But your other state reps, were they taking you seriously? Were they listening to you on your issues? Was there a seat at the table for you right away? Or in traditional mom fashion, did you have to pull up your own seat?
Because my predecessor had been here so long, I'm like, oh, they must be very welcoming to women. And, she lasted long in this job. And they were disappointingly distant in the beginning. I mean, I introduced myself as, Amanda. I helped start the first chapter of Moms for Liberty. They had a very negative view of the organization because of the way the media portrayed Moms for Liberty nationwide. And you're just a crazy school board mom up there reading porn at the podium, and
not serious,
unserious. What are you doing here? You don't belong here. And nobody ever said it directly, but it was tough to get people to listen and take me seriously. Like I said, I was a finance professional. Like, I bring a lot to the table.
Yeah.
This is a full-time legislature. So, the pay isn't great, but it's mostly people who are either retired or semi-retired or own their own businesses, or maybe people who are young in this early part of their career. But typically people like me are not going to set aside their well-paying job to come and do this to the best of their ability. Some people, you can only commit so much, and everybody comes for a different reason with a different set of skills and experience, and how much they can contribute. I don't do anything halfway. So I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm doing it 100%.
Love it.
Not everybody loved that though, and you're sort of like, you're eager and you want to work and you want to get things done. And there's people who've been here for a long time and they're like, that's not really how it works. So you take the whole first session trying to get to know people, learning procedure and process, learning your staff,
building relationships, right? Moms for Liberty values are to stand for truth, which you absolutely have been doing from day one. Building relationships is number 2. So you've checked off 2 of those really well.
But I'm not going to say it wasn't discouraging from time to time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But we got somewhere, and I got a set of bills passed in the first session as a freshman. I mean, that's not always the case, and this session, it's much different. So we had some changes in the legislature with our legislative maps and some redistricting that put us at a little bit more of a disadvantage. We're still in the majority, but it's a much smaller majority. So it's a little harder to get things done, and it makes it even more difficult to get things done with the other side.
Yeah.
They think they're going to take over next time. So there's not a lot of, willingness to work together. And then this thing came up with, the state of Wisconsin has a Department of Public Instruction. So that's our Department of Ed. It's an education agency for the state. The head of that agency is elected. It's a statewide elected position called the state superintendent. It's not a cabinet member that the governor appoints. Our governor, Tony Evers, was the state superintendent before he ran for governor. And then right now we have Dr. Jill Underly. And among other things, Dr. Jill has lowered the cut scores in the state.
Are you serious?
2 times.
And she's only been in office a year?
Oh, no, she was reelected once.
Oh,
already,
she was just reelected. That's what it was last year.
So, so she,
so she's lowering the standards.
We have the school report card, and schools that were below expectations
are now
exceeding expectations. And
it's terrible.
That is robbing our children of their futures. We cannot keep saying you're doing a good job when you can't read in high school. So we have schools in Milwaukee Public School District that are exceeding expectations where less than 1% of the students can read.
Yeah, I hope everybody's listening to that. You have schools in Milwaukee that are rated by the state as exceeding expectations, but less than 1% can read. Mm-hmm. That is criminal.
It is. It's absolutely
You probably
criminal.
Can't say some things because you're trying to maneuver in
popular, but they are who they are.
We're back. So sometimes for whatever reason,
if you're watching it live, we will put these all together later for those that are going to watch it after in the recorded packaged episode. I'm here. I'm Tina Deskovich, the CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. I'm here with Wisconsin State Representative Amanda Nedweski. Her journey from bandit of moms as the co-chapter chair of Kenosha County to a state rep that's making major impact across the state for children. But a couple things I want to say since we took a break for a second is one, here in her office, I brought my soda in to drink, but she has got her Joyful Warrior mug. And so you want to show it to the camera that she's drinking out of. I was so impressed. She has her Joyful Warrior award over there on her shelf. And, you know, she's just representing, I think she's even in navy blue today with her
Absolutely.
American flag heels. She is representing Moms for Liberty in a fabulous way at the state capitol, fighting for kids across the state. I also want to take a moment to share with you some information about our celebration this year. Moms for Liberty turned 5 last month, 5 years old. America is 250 years old this year, and we are celebrating in a big way. We have joined Glenn Beck and his new initiative, The Torch, American Journey Experience, is powered by Mercury One, and the official Freedom 250 out of Washington, D.C. And we are putting on a once-in-a-lifetime event. You can go to momsforliberty.org/Freedom 250 to learn more about it. We're going to be on Ellis Island on May 2nd. We have reserved the entire island just for us. We are going to have a black tie gala in the place where millions of people have come to become Americans, to chase the American dream. We're going to showcase folks that are living the American dream, that have traveled and taken great risks to come to America, to become citizens, to make a better life for their children, because that is what America's about. We are going to have fireworks at the end of the night over the Statue of Liberty that we're going to enjoy. It's going to be a remarkable evening with some high-powered guests. Glenn Beck will be speaking, Tim and David Barton, and some others that we're not ready to announce. So go to momsforliberty.org/Freedom 250 and get your tickets, because Glenn Beck announced this morning, and my phone and computer were blowing up as people were buying tickets. It's going to sell out quick. Thank you for that. Now back to our show, The Fire of Liberty. We've got State Representative Amanda Nedweski here in Wisconsin talking about her journey and her bills. And so for this last segment, we're going to talk a little bit about her current bill she's working on and what that's going to do when it passes and gets signed into law. And then we're going to close out just talking about the importance of being civically engaged, voting this year for the midterms, no matter where you stand on issues. Like the voter turnout in off presidential years is dismally low. And it's not okay. And so we're going to talk about that. But first, let's just talk about the bill that you currently have. Tell us a little bit about it and what you plan on doing for the state of Wisconsin with this bill.
So a couple of years ago, there was a case in a local school. A fourth grade teacher, 30-year-old fourth grade male teacher, was engaged for over a 2-year period in grooming a young girl, 12 years old through 14 years old. And it came to light that this was happening through a friend. Through the police investigation, they uncovered thousands and thousands of Snapchat messages, and then other evidence that was more physical evidence, letters, cards, behaviors that were observed by others. And in some states, that type of grooming behavior is a felony, a criminal act. In Wisconsin, it is not. And we learned from law enforcement, and we learned from...
So an adult can groom a child in the state of Wisconsin, and it's not a felony?
Not yet.
Okay.
It was so egregious and abhorrent. And we had a whistleblower locally who runs a website called the Kenosha County Eye. And he was working with the family to they reached out to him. They said, this is happening in the school. They didn't do anything. The state's not doing anything.
The school didn't do anything?
No, not initially.
The state didn't do anything?
Yeah. When law enforcement became involved, then the school was cooperative. But they dropped the ball the first time around.
Yeah.
And once all this evidence was collected, the state Department of Public Instruction offered him a deal saying they're in charge of licensing. They're not the criminal investigators,
right.
Okay? They said, you can voluntarily surrender your license and resign instead of going through the revocation process, which is outlined in statute. So he voluntarily surrendered his license. He was ultimately charged with 22 counts of disorderly conduct because that's the only charge law enforcement and prosecutors could come up with for this egregious behavior. And this, like I was saying, this guy knew exactly where to draw the line. He knew, what would be considered exploitation, what would be considered an assault and what wasn't. And he knew where to stop, but it was still grooming over this period of time. And
he was a teacher?
He was a fourth grade teacher.
Oh my goodness.
Eighth grade teacher? I think fourth grade. Anyway, and his wife also was a teacher in the same school building. So the parent outcry was intense. And a lot of parents who got to know me through COVID reached out to me. You're in the legislature now. What can you do about this? I said, what do you mean there isn't a crime? So we started working with law enforcement and with prosecutors in the state and said, what do you need? What do you need for this? And they said, well, we need it to be a crime. We wanted to make sure we got it right, at least as close to right as we can. So it took a long time. We wanted to make sure we heard from prosecutors and examples all around the state where like, where would we miss an exception here or here? And what should the penalty levels be? And what's realistic in getting justice for a victim? What kind of tools do we need to include in the bill? So it took a while. Well, last fall, a local publication here in Madison, who typically leans pretty far to the left, did an expose on the Department of Public Instruction saying, look,
wow,
there
good for them.
Yeah, there are over 200 cases of teacher sexual misconduct.
Turns out no one wants kids to be sexually abused.
Yeah. And the Department of Public Instruction was using this.
Did you say 200?
Over 200 over a period of 3 years that they reported on. They said, look, the Capital Times is the name of the publication, and the author is Danielle Duclos. She's done an excellent series on this, and she exposed that they were doing these voluntary surrender agreements to allow these misconduct investigations from the licensing standpoint to end, and sort of you're out of teaching now, like you can't get a license here again. But those agreements aren't public. So the public has no way to see what's in them. What were they doing?
Well, they could also they could come to Florida and retire and get a job there, and there's no, right?
Or they could go down the street and work at the Boys and Girls Club. Or they could go down the street and work at the YMCA or at a child care center. And if they do a background check on that person and then they go to DPI and say, oh, I see the status of your license was voluntarily surrendered. You must have just wanted to leave teaching. It doesn't look like, why was your license revoked? It looks like you voluntarily surrendered. Right. And there's a way that they have been sort of protecting the details of those investigations. And it really became like the public was very alarmed by this, as they should be. And I said, well, I think it's about time we introduced the grooming bill. So we were tweaking it. We were kind of at the end. We called in, I chair the Assembly Committee on Government Operations, Accountability, and Transparency, also known as GOAT. And
you're the GOAT.
Yes, I'm the GOAT.
You're the chair of the GOAT.
Chair of the GOAT Committee. It's the legislative version of Doge, but it's certainly not even close to as powerful because we don't have authority to go into agencies.
And its name's not as cool either. Doge.
So anyway, it is. We called in the department. We called in the state superintendent. She did not come before the committee.
Wow.
She sent some representatives. They answered a lot of questions, but it basically said we need this to be a crime, so that you have guidance as to what this is when you're investigating licensures as well.
Yeah.
So I introduced Assembly Bill 677, which criminalizes grooming of a child for sexual activity. And there are multiple different felony levels of penalty depending on position of trust in relationship with a child, if a child has a disability, different levels of we had public hearing on it in the Assembly. It was well received. Even my Democrat colleagues have been working with me on this. I mean, it turns out nobody wants kids to be groomed. So it passed in the Assembly, 93-6.
Oh.
So some of the feedback
I don't even want to know about
some of the
who those
feedback I've
6
gotten
are.
was you better check the hard drives of those 6. And one of those 6 people that voted against Assembly Bill 677 is running for governor.
Wow.
And that would be Representative Francesca Hong.
That needs to be pushed out everywhere. Say her name again. And it's a woman.
Representative Francesca Hong.
Wow.
She's a representative here in the Madison area. She voted against it. Another one that voted against it is the teachers union president in the Racine Unified School District, also a big urban district.
Despicable.
So we had a hearing on it in the Senate a week ago or so. The Senate is going to pass it.
Good.
And the governor has signaled that he will probably sign it. I don't want to
Yeah, don't jinx it. Knock on some wood.
but this is going to be a huge step in the direction of protecting children and deterring these people, these predators, from even engaging in that kind of behavior. We have a follow-up bill, a trailer bill to that requires schools, all schools, not just public schools, private schools, charter schools, to have a policy in place that addresses appropriate communication between staff and students. Sorry that we have to do that, but apparently
That was my brain was like, that is
there
shocking.
have been 200 cases in 3 years that we know about.
Needs to be addressed.
So you have to have a policy and you have to train on it once a year. I don't care if it's a 15-minute tutorial. What are you going to use an app? Are you going to just use email? What are you going, I'm not telling you what the policy has to be, but you have to have it.
Needs to be addressed.
It needs to be addressed. And we had, that's in the health and safety part of our school code. So I may really think that it's something that applies to everyone. I'm not sure if the governor will sign that one. It's gotten positive votes out of the legislature, but we'll see. And then we have, I just introduced legislation last week that addresses the voluntary surrender and the issue of confidentiality agreements. So at the local level, you have administrations and school boards that sometimes when there's behavior like this, they offer voluntary resignation, or they say, we're going to terminate you. And we're going to enter into an agreement where we will not make public why. And again, that's passing the trash.
Not okay. Yeah, for sure.
They might go to another district. They might go to another job where they're in direct contact with children. And we have a bill now that would prohibit those kinds of agreements. So hopefully those move through quickly.
So I would say for those that are watching, especially if you're a chapter chair or one of our other state legislators, like what does it look like in your state for this? Because are there guidelines? How many of these things are happening? Are there 200 in your state that are going I don't want to say unresolved, no consequences? And let's dig in together as an organization and see how this is working across the country and help our legislators to pass policy. I'm sure you'd be willing to share what you guys are doing here to help them make sure children are safe in their state. And so we are about out of time, but I want to talk briefly about, we've got elections this year, and Wisconsin's a very important state. Moms for Liberty is very active here. Even our national organization, like I said, we've got school board elections coming up in April.
As a matter of fact, there's actually a primary next week.
Oh, it's the primary next week. And then you've got these school board candidates, and we want to get candidates in positions that care about kids and will support a parent's right to direct the upbringing of their children. But in the fall, there's all kinds of elections going on in your state. And historically, voter turnout on off-year elections is not good. Yeah. Is it the same here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, we know there are going to be challenges with turnout. For me, what I see at the local level is always low participation. Yeah. But that's where you make the most impact. That's right in your backyard.
Tell the people look at the camera and tell the people
being involved at the local level is where you have the most direct impact. And I didn't run for school board when I was in the bandit of traveling moms, because our school board is, the teachers unions and the Democrat Party invests a massive amount of money in those races that we can't even compete with. So I went to where I could be effective. And
you may not know, but I feel like even somebody told me at some point, this last election, Kenosha school, it was like $50,000 or was it more, 100,000. I mean, you could think of maybe, it was a lot of money.
The last one, but the one before, we had 4 candidates. There were actually 4 seats open. It was kind of an odd situation out of 7. And our 4 candidates collectively maybe raised $12,000 as a foursome. The the money coming in for the other candidates on the other side. And these are nonpartisan races, but everybody
But there's
knows.
candidates that are backed by the
Yeah.
teachers unions, and
$230,000.
that was I knew it was an astronomical number. Did you guys hear that? $230,000 in a school board race, and then the parents' rights candidates raised $12,000. Like how can we take back education? How can we make sure kids can read? How can we make sure parents are in the driver's seat of all of the things that are coming up, like AI in education, and all of these things are going to be happening? If you don't have parents in the driver's seat on the school board, you have teachers unions in the driver's seat. And we have seen what the teachers unions do. I will beat them up all day long because you can point to facts. What they push for nationally is not better education. It's not better learning at their conferences. It's like foreign policy and all of these other issues that have nothing to do with teaching a 5-year-old phonics. And so I get very passionate about this. And I just encourage folks to support school board candidates, focus on these local elections, because when you take the time to learn, you're going to want to go vote for the right candidate. Right. And the best candidate hardly ever wins in these local elections. So would you agree with what I'm saying?
I agree. And then when we do have a win, what seems to happen is somebody says, okay, I'll do it. And they do it for one term and they want to be done.
Because we're not lifelong politicians. We're parents just trying to make a difference.
But that doesn't mean that seat is safe then.
Yeah.
No seat is safe. Every seat can flip at any given time. We have to be vigilant. We have to make sure that we always have somebody in the waiting on the bench, ready for the next one.
Building the bench. Maybe that's what we should have called this episode. Building the bench. And no seat is safe.
Our local people, we are building the bench for things like county board, state legislature, maybe running for Congress.
The epitome of that.
But we need to do more of that. We were asleep at the wheel for a long time. And if there was one blessing that came out of COVID, it was we woke up a little bit. But you can't get complacent now. You can't say, okay, President Trump got elected and he's a big fan of Moms for Liberty and he's going to lead the charge at the national level on parents' rights. In the state of Wisconsin, everything is at risk still. They're not following any of those executive orders on DEI. They're not even turning over data on food share to the federal government. I mean, it's just they're blatantly ignoring the law.
Civic engagement is a lifetime pursuit. You can't do it for a year. You can't do it for 6 months. Yes, you can do it stronger and pull back during certain periods of your life, but civic engagement is a lifetime pursuit. And so we're going to close out here with the last question that we ask every guest on the Fire of Liberty. And what does it mean to you to be a joyful warrior?
Well, it means this job for me. I am very blessed that I get to come to this building and have the opportunity to defend the mission of this organization with my heart and with my soul and with my experience and my skills, and do it with a smile. It's not always easy, but when you have great people behind you rooting for you and bringing you the support and strength, it inspires you every day. And, I look around here, I've got, pictures of friends and things, and it all comes back to, we started Moms for Liberty in 2021 in Wisconsin. And whenever I get discouraged or I feel like maybe, my time here should be up, I'm like, no, there's still more work to be done. And I look at those kids who can't read and they can't do the math, and I think, you know what, they need a brighter future, and someone has to care. Then I don't want to be a lifelong politician, and I just put that on camera. I don't, but I'm not finished yet. So it means a great deal to me to have all the ladies in the room today, in the building today. And I remember the first time I came here wearing my T-shirt to testify on a bill, and it was one of the first bills I testified on was the Parents' Bill of Rights. And then a year later, after testifying, I was a co-author on that bill.
It's remarkable. Yeah. What a remarkable journey. And I think that's a strong way to end this episode of the Fire of Liberty show with Wisconsin State Representative Amanda Nedweski. She has had a long journey, a 5-year long journey of starting the Moms for Liberty chapter as a co-chair with Amber, we love Amber. She is one of our state ambassadors in Wisconsin. But our state rep here is fighting for kids, and she's making huge changes in the state of Wisconsin for their future and to protect them. And I would say that this episode stands as a call to everyone watching to do your part. Run for office, start a Moms for Liberty chapter, go to momsforliberty.org and just join and be a national member. Until next week, when we'll be home in our home office in Florida, we'll see you then. This is the Fire of Liberty Show.